The popularization of science was very, very important in the Haskalah. It was a very important motif in, say, key Hebrew journals such as Hatzfirah, which came out in Warsaw. The popularization of science was very, very important in the early literature and lectures of the Bund. In the Brothers Ashkenazi, there's a parody of how early Bundists are discovering that there's no soul, but instead there's electricity, and everything is ordered by electrical currents and electrical sparks. The idea of the natural world was very, very important for Jews who were leaving the religious sphere and were trying to find some rational way of replacing their religious identity. So popularization was very, very important on all levels, on the level of the serious explanation of science, which you got, say, in Chaim Zelig Slonimsky, or you got in Nochem Sokolov. It was very, very important in Russia in the so-called thick journals, the Tolstoy Journali, which many Jews read. It was a very important part of Polish popular literature. So it's no wonder that this was transferred to Yiddish. Now, the issue was that Yiddish intellectuals like Chaim Zhitlovsky argued that this trend towards popularization went too far. And in a very celebrated argument between Zhitlovsky and Abe Kahan of the Forward, Abe Kahan accused Zhitlovsky of being too highfalutin and too abstract, and Zhitlovsky told Abe Kahan, you can't popularize anything unless you know what you're popularizing. And so you have to have serious descriptions of the natural sciences before you can popularize them. I just want to say that when you finally began to have serious Yiddish secular education, beginning largely in World War I and then flourishing in places like Vilna in the 20s and 30s, one of the great challenges, one of the great adventures was to develop new Yiddish textbooks for chemistry, physics, mathematics, to develop new terms. And Vilna led the way, and this quest for putting nature and science at the heart of a child's experience, which we also see in, say, schools like the Real Gymnasia or in the experience of the Menem Sanitarium. This was also an indirect way of enriching the Yiddish language itself. These books were put out by the Workmen's Circle. And the Workmen's Circle, at the very beginning, like some other Yiddish secular organizations, had a very conflicted attitude towards religion and Jewish tradition. Many elements in the Workmen's Circle wanted to get away from Jewish tradition. And the question is, how do you use Yiddish and at the same time get away from Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? And one way of doing this was to turn Yiddish into a means of conveying natural science, the natural world, turn Yiddish into a means of education, giving the working class Jew in New York, the sweatshop sewing machine operator, an insight into geology and astronomy. Maybe he might be able to help his kids do their homework. But this was also a way of using Yiddish as a bridge towards the wider world.